are we? CCLA difference what? Difference makers.
Ready? All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everybody who are joining us online as well. Welcome to our session, Unlocking Learning Acceleration, a focus on mathematics. I want to get you acquainted with some of the materials, especially if you're joining us online. There is at tinyurl.com. It's /CCLA 2025. That will lead you to the note-taking guide, which will have a copy of the slide deck for you, as well as a space for you to jot down any notes. You can make your own copy of that, and that will be available for you. So I'm going to give you just a few minutes to download that before we move on. All right. And if you are joining us online, we do have somebody here dedicated to monitoring our Zoom platform. So if you have any questions or needs, please feel free to enter that into the chat. Welcome. And once again, my name is Kim Gerould. I am a coordinator of curriculum and instruction for the Placer County Office of Education, and I am joined with my colleague. Hello, I'm Heidi Espindola. I'm the STEM coordinator at PCOE. We'll give you all a few moments to get to know each other. If you're in the room, feel free to group up however you'd like. But we'd like to just do an inclusive welcome around the 6 gifts that you see. Which one best describes how you feel doing the math? But in addition to that, and if you are online, I'll put you into a breakout room for 4 minutes here shortly. Have a conversation, introduce yourself, say what's your name, maybe site or district or context that you work in currently, and maybe what brought you here. What was the curiosity for this session, or maybe what are you hoping to take away from our session? So why don't you go ahead and take a few minutes. Breakout session, we'll do, let's do 3 minutes. Was that okay? 3 minutes for a breakout, and then we'll come back. Okay, if you're in the room, feel free to just stand up, gather, introduce yourselves before we get started. Right now we're using just amount.
Okay. Two, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Just for. How do you do that? I don't know when you're going to.
Yeah. We might know that. Yeah, we're like, so yeah, so our.
The same throughout.
Okay.
Because.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
It's like, especially,
They're back, the others are like,
so they're still talking.
okay, cool.
I'm super excited.
Right? Right? You are right.
Yeah. We're going to come back because our breakout rooms are ready to close. We'll join back together in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Right. And if we pause in the room, we're just pausing for our breakout room. All my members to rejoin us. We apparently have 16 people online, which is great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. All right, welcome back, everybody. So we wanted to give you a chance to connect because throughout the session, there'll be moments where you will be digging into looking at an example lesson. And so we wanted to give you time to just get familiar and get to know your quote unquote neighbors that you'll be working with throughout the day. Anybody in here just want to briefly share out where you are on the map of choices of gifts?
I'm a B. Oh, I gotta see that. I'm a B. Super excited. Yeah, I love math. I think math. Yes, we do math at my house. My children don't realize they're always doing math. We talk about numbers all the time. How much this? We talk about at the dinner table constantly. Yeah, I love it. Math is everywhere. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing out. Anybody else want to share out? Heidi and I kind of agreed that we were both in the D, like we both love math and we think it's fun and we also like the collaborative part of it. So they're kind of doing the choreography. So that's where we are and how we feel about doing math. So now you'd like to share out?
All very, very good.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and move on then. Our objectives today, we want to quickly.
An A.
Oh, an A.
Yes.
An A. And that's okay. Welcome. You got this. We're here for you. All right. Objectives. We're going to review learning acceleration in action. We're going to talk a little bit about what learning acceleration is, just to give us some foundational understanding of where this work started from and where it comes from and is derived from. We're going to identify the major work of the grade and learning progressions for a unit on fractions specifically. We felt that if we dug into a specific unit, that there'd be more context to derive things from. Multiplication, sorry. We're going to explore student achievement partners' coherence map to determine critical understandings, which we'll talk more about what that is. Examine showing that you learn assessments to align with those critical understandings, and also consider possible ways to design instruction or pacing to support your acceleration. So our agenda follows very much along those lines, and we'll read the slides out for accessibility reasons. We're going to have a welcoming activity in context, reflect on learning acceleration in action, learning acceleration on priority math content, learning acceleration on critical understandings. Then we'll jump into learning acceleration, diagnose and design, have closure, and a little bit of feedback. Again, don't forget about the note-taking guide. Please feel free to make your own copy. Yes.
They said it just a little bit.
Okay, is that better? Thank you for responding that way. Our work, everything that you see has been a part of the CCLA group, the collaborative that we're a part of. We do all of our work in partnership with 6 county offices, which include Contra Costa, Imperial, Los Angeles, Riverside, Placer, which is where we are from, and Tulare County offices, with the leadership of our Santa Clara County Office of Education and the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, also known as CCEE. So we wanted to start briefly with a what, why, and how of learning acceleration, so you can see where the work we'll talk about today fits in that. So we wanted to start off with a quick personal reflection around learning acceleration. Think about for a moment, what is your current understanding of learning acceleration? What does it look like? And what might be some essential elements of learning acceleration? If you're not quite sure, that's absolutely okay. We wanted to give you a moment to think about that. In the room, you can turn and talk to a partner. If you're joining us in Zoom, go ahead if you want to drop any thoughts in the chat. We won't send you the breakout room for this one, but just drop some ideas in chat. So we'll give you a few moments to think about it individually, and if anybody would like to share out, we'll provide that opportunity. And in the room, please feel free to talk to each other. And Arian, if anybody drops anything in the chat, please let us know. Anybody in the room, would you like to offer anything about, and Joseph, it's a little unfair because but you can for sure speak up. Anybody want to speak to either of the prompts? Maybe what does it look like? Or what do you predict it might look like, and what might be some essential elements? Okay. It's okay. We're going to go through it next. So we're going to go move on.
So in the chat, they said, Debbie mentioned learning acceleration begins with knowing your students, where they're at in their understanding, and then building off of that.
Yes.
And Joseph is he's agreeing with you.
Yeah, he's saying that too. Thank you, Debbie. Absolutely. So we thought we would start with some myths or some misinformation you might have heard, and talk about what learning acceleration is not. It is not speeding up or more time on, it's more time on priority units, not less. So it's not the speeding up. When you hear that word acceleration, sometimes we think about accelerating the gas. It is not a one size fits all approach. It is also not spending time remediating large chunks of content from prior grades, although we understand that remediation may be needed. So we're not saying that that never happens, but we want to just give pause to think about when is it used and how. It is not a drill and kill approach to developing skills. So you'll see that there's a very thoughtful, intentional way of thinking how you might design your instruction so that you can provide that just-in-time learning. And it's not holding low expectations for students. You're really at the heart of learning acceleration. It's holding that rigor, the grade level content, those standards for everyone at a very high level, and thinking about what are the access points for everybody to reach that success, those criteria and those expectations. And then it's not reducing the rigor of the grade level content. How can we provide those moments of instruction so students can access current grade work, current year work? So what is it? It is moving forward with grade level content. However, you're really thinking about how can I best support my learners in moving forward with that? And that first step, and why Heidi and I felt like this session was really important, was it's about thinking about prioritizing your content. What is it that are those key non-negotiables, those things that students must understand? And it really is very helpful when we think about, we go around to sites all the time, and it's like we have so much, there's so much to teach. How are we going to get through everything? And really thinking about prioritizing content and giving yourselves, your teammates, your grade level, a framework, a process to do that through will buy you that time that you're feeling you don't have. It is access to grade level content despite knowledge and skill gaps. So again, where are those gaps? How do we address those while still maintaining current grade level learning? And it's identifying the most crucial knowledge and skills that students need. And how might we think about designing and integrating those into our current lessons? So what strategies might we use to do that? The strategies are really designed to meet pupils where they are in their learning. To do this, we need to know, and much like Debbie said online, what is it that they already know? And where is it that I might need to teach into some prior year learning that's really crucial to what I'm teaching in this moment? It's evidence-based approaches to enable students to make strong, rapid progress in their mastery of those knowledge and skills, while at the same time thinking about how I might design leveraging maybe individual or small group instruction that will allow you to think about, I can really incorporate some just-in-time scaffolds for my learners so that they have an on-ramp to the current year's learning. Okay. While we're going through our process that we've taken sites through, we want you to just keep these 5 components of learning acceleration in the back of your minds, and also think about how might they be incorporated into my lesson design. We're really focusing today on that green portion, which is priority content, and a little bit have some time about evidence-based strategies, but also think about universal design for learning, social emotional learning, and culturally sustaining pedagogy are also embedded in the process. It's an intentional piece of how you might design for each lesson. Okay, and Heidi's going to take us through this idea of acceleration versus remediation.
Awesome, thank you, Kim. All right, I need the clicker. Thank you. Okay, so we talked a little bit about acceleration, but we wanted to contrast it with remediation now. So I know there's a lot of words on the slide. I'm going to read them for accessibility, okay? So when we think about remediation, remediation often focuses on drilling students on isolated skills that bear little resemblance to the current curriculum. Activities connect to standards from years ago and aim to have students master content from years past. So I know that this could be, these programs that we put them on, whether it be an online computer-based program where they're just doing an assessment, and then whatever holes they have, they're literally just walking through and doing practice problems on them. So that would be a remediation viewpoint. Accelerated learning strategically prepares students for success in current grade level content. So we're really focusing on that grade level piece. And acceleration ready students for new learning. Past concepts and skills are addressed, but always in the purposeful context of current learning. So we're being very, very purposeful about what past content we are trying to attend to. To help us with those 2 definitions, we have this visual metaphor for us that we have used many, many times. And I'd like you to take a look at them and see how you would interpret them as remediation on the left-hand side versus acceleration on the right-hand side. So take a minute, think to yourself, how do these represent remediation and acceleration? And when you're ready, talk to a partner or put it in the chat. All right, what do we have? What are some thoughts that we might have in terms of how these pictures represent the 2 concepts? Yes, please. Hold on one moment.
So on the remediation side, it's like digging your students deeper into a hole where they're lacking their gap still, whereas acceleration is building that bridge between where they are and where they need to be.
Awesome. Yeah, building that bridge to the next where they need to be. Perfect. And the digging deeper holes. So, and it's so funny because we got that same exact interpretation of that left-hand side. Was it yesterday or the day before? Oh my gosh, this week is blurred together. I don't know about how for you, but And we had always interpreted it as like you have a gopher in your yard and you have like 3 million holes, and then you're like going around just randomly filling holes. And then people were like, no, it's digging deeper. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good interpretation too. I really like that. Okay, so whatever works for you.
In the chat, it
yes.
said that remediation is patchwork, filing gaps, holes holes, in and understanding.
Oh, you have.
I have it. And then also filling in the holes of conceptual understanding. And to the last couple, remediation is more about staying where the current levels are and focusing only on that, when where acceleration is bridging the current levels to where the current learning needs to take place. And then Debbie also mentioned acceleration is a bridge, providing a pathway to new learning.
Awesome. Very nice. Thank you so much for engaging in that. Okay, every time we get a different glimmer of a different vantage point on these pictures, so that's great. Okay, so I'm going to show you this graphic, and it is animated, but this is kind of a putting that theory into practice, looking at curriculum and content over a timeline. So if we have, say, a 4th grade class, and we're looking at September through December, it may be like a lot of curriculums that the first unit is entirely focused on the previous grade level content, right? And so if you were just going to use the curriculum as is, you would be doing all this previous grade level content before you finally got to the current grade level. With an accelerated lens, we're now looking at starting immediately with that current grade level content. And we're going to be identifying where that previous grade level content supports specific current grade level content and putting it in as necessary. So not just putting it in because we know it supports, but like then we're assessing and diagnosing our students to make sure, do they need this or do they already have it? And then we're getting rid of some stuff that they don't actually need. So being very, very purposeful. So we're gonna, this quote kind of feeds into this. So to reach their potential, struggling students need the most powerful, effective instructional practices that research and practice have to offer. Accelerating students as a method of boosting academic achievement is as much a shift in mindset as it is in instruction. So we looked at kind of the logistical pieces of instruction, but now we're saying, okay, this is really a shift in mindset in totality. So I wanted to give you a minute. What does this statement mean to you? How are you seeing, we have a shift in instruction and curriculum usage, but what about the mindset piece? Let's take a minute. Right, friends. Any thought about that shift in mindsets? Yes, my dear. Zoom. Thank you.
So I serve as kind of an instructional coach, and I think some of this speaks to, I often hear teachers say, well, they just don't know how to do that yet, so they can't do the regular level, or they're being given 1st grade work and the rest of their peers are getting their 3rd grade work, which is grade level. So getting them to that point doesn't mean that they're stuck in that lower part, which I think is really powerful for them to think about. And it does have to be a mindset change for sure.
Yes, thank you. Any other thoughts about that mindset shift? Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. That shifting about, okay, yeah, we really are still focused on that grade level content. Even if we have holes, yes, we're not going to just go back and teach previous grade levels. We're going to use it as that bridge. Okay, so thinking about learning acceleration in action, Kim.
So what we did in our work with sites is think about how can we put this idea and almost like a framework, a process that seems very viable or doable for site teams. And we wanted to create something that wouldn't seem like yet another thing to do, but that would lean and build into like the work of PLCs. And so we tried to create a process that would be interwoven into the time teachers already have built in to have conversations around things like this. So the first one is when we think about how can we accelerate learning is to prioritize that content. So this is going to be our anchor kind of process. Heidi's going to take us through each one with an example and then also give you all a time to think about some of these pieces with a sample lesson. So the first one is to prioritize content. The second one is really identifying some critical understandings, that prior knowledge, the vocabulary, background knowledge. And then we move into diagnose. We'll talk about what that is. Debbie mentioned it online. What do our students already know? How do we use that information to then design our instruction and plan for how might we use some strategies and what that might look like in our classrooms. So when we think about this, we're going to dig first into the first one, which is priority content, which is to prioritize the most critical skills and knowledge for each subject area and grade level. For us today, it's math. And when we think about this idea of prioritizing content, we're thinking that it truly should be the focus for all students, recognizing that intentional instructional choices will be essential for supporting all students to mastery. And that this is especially true for students with specialized learning needs. So when we're looking at our data across the state of California, and we're looking at the differences, the gaps that we see, we really see some gaps when we're talking about students with those specialized learning needs. Not all content in a given grade, oops, we just lost our, in a given grade should be emphasized equally, because some content requires greater emphasis than others based on research about what matters most and the time and practice that they take to develop. And that seems very overwhelming when we're like, okay, but what is that? That's going to take a long time. Heidi has a tool and some resources that will really support you looking at what that priority content is. So there are some really great folks and intelligent folks out in the world who have distilled some of that information for us. And so we want to use that and leverage that to our advantage.
All right, so we will be focusing on Achieve the Core. They have some amazing resources, and particularly the major work of the grade. That's where we start off with our teacher friends. And we think about what are the standards within the chapters, and are those standards a priority? So right here in our group, we're going to pass out this third grade major work of the grade handout. They have them for every single grade level, K-8. And it helps us identify where we want to spend a majority of our time. And I believe Ariane dropped in the chat a link to that. Fabulous. So within that, we have some visual identification of major work of the grade with green squares. We also have supporting clusters, which is a blue outline of a square, and then additional clusters in a yellow outline of a circle. And these are clusters of standards. So they are not the standards individually, but they're the clusters, remembering that our standards are broken up first by grade, then by domain. Within each domain, there could be several clusters, and then with each cluster, there could be one or more standards. So thinking about the clusters that have greater emphasis, and this is not to say we're dropping anything, but we're just spending more time on certain things and less on others. The supporting clusters definitely have specific ties to our major work of the grade, whereas our additional clusters actually could be done completely in isolation. So they don't directly tie. Okay, so in thinking about your own planning process, how have you identified and emphasized the most critical skills and knowledge for your students? So when you're looking at your own curriculum, have you been using the major work of the grade? What other things have you been using? And then thinking about how might you adjust your current approach to align with learning acceleration strategies. So we're just getting some really current understanding of what you've done in the past. 5-minute breakout for conversation. So we're going to allow some conversations now. 3? Is 3 good? Okay. Awesome. We're going to do 3. Sound good? Okay. Thank you. This is interesting.
Yeah. And then they're on the lines. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it was easier if we were to do this. It's easier to do than just do it. Yeah. Have you used these before? For some people, yeah, try and true. Yeah. Yeah, you have, because are you letting you select for that? No. Right, so there is something. Oh, there's a setting, there's a setting. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, just push it on. So it's probably not good pushing it over instead of letting it having like. As I answer, having like the really so pretty. Okay, you have several things to drop next. All back? All right. So we had several folks in our room here say, yes, this is something I use regularly with teachers or themselves. And then I know I've heard some people talk about frameworks. They always use the frameworks to help them prioritize. And then some are seeking guidance from the curriculum itself. All right, so we're going to get into an actual unit that we've pulled for you. We're going to be putting it in the chat, and then we've handed it out. You should get two different links. One is the PDF of the actual curriculum. It's a Go Math curriculum, grade 3, unit 3. And this is from a school. We literally did this process on this unit with teachers. We pulled out, the other link is the overview of all of the lessons 3.1 to 3.7. And it outlines the standard up at the top in the white box of each day or each lesson rather. And then it has an essential question, an objective, some vocabulary, and EL strategy that they have identified for this specific curriculum, right? Because we need to, let's put it into practice. Let's look at what teachers are actually being asked to use within the classroom.
So when we looked over this curriculum, we asked ourselves, is this content a priority? And we recognized that all of them were in the OA domain. And then when we looked at our Achieve the Core major work of the grade, we recognized that, yep, every single one of the OAs in third grade is a major cluster. And so this is something that needs to be hit heavy, right? So that we need to be spending significant amount of time on this unit. So we're also going to give out this sheet. Oh, sorry, I told you the wrong one, Kim. So we use this as kind of like a little guide, the sheet that's coming around right now. Did I ask you to put it in the chat? This one? Awesome. Instructional sequence. Okay, so the instructional sequence is what I'm referring to on this slide. And the first question is it a priority? And we went through and yep, check it off. We're good. Okay, so then we ask ourselves, okay, that's great. It says it's priority. Now let's see if it actually is grade level content. Those are two very different things. We know that curriculum publishers, well, are we going to say outright lie? Maybe not. Just, bend the truth. They're very generous. Yeah. Yes, they like to put a stamp on it sometimes, and it's not actually that. So we have to go through and see for ourselves whether it is actually grade level content. So we're going to do that. We actually went into lesson 3.1. And if you look at the PDF of the curriculum, you'll see within lesson 3.1, let's go to that. We're looking at the third page in the PDF. Third because it's, front and back, right? And we're looking at these wonderful problems. Okay, so the first one is a share and show, and it says complete use the picture, skip count to find how many wheels in all. And there's a picture with 8 wheels, and every 2 wheels are circled, and it says blank groups of 2, blank 2s, skipped count by 2, 2, 4, blank, blank. So there are blank wheels. Okay. Okay. And then number 11, I believe that is on the next page. Nope, I lied. I fibbed. I stretched the truth, rather. All right. Number 5 in the PDF. A bookcase has 4 shelves. Each shelf holds 5 books. How many books are in the bookcase? Draw counters to model the problem and explain how you solved the problem. Okay, and in the PDF it has the answers. This is the TE. So it has the counters being put in and then an explanation about the 20 books, and skip counting by 5s is part of the explanation. Okay. Now I'm remembering that this is supposed to be third grade OA1. Okay. What is third grade OA1? Well, interpret products of whole numbers. Interpret 5 times 7 as the whole number of objects in 5 groups of 7 objects each. For example, describe a context in which a total number of objects can be expressed as 5 times 7. Here's an example of that standard. 4 situations are described below. In one situation, the number of plums is equal to 8 times 4. Which situation is it? Methinks 'tis not the standard. Okay, so we said to ourselves, yeah, what do we think about this? So let's hear from you. What do you think about this? In what ways does the lesson align with the expectations of standard third grade OA1? In what ways does it reflect foundational skills from earlier grades? What do you think, given that information?
They breakout rooms? Are they breakout rooms? I believe so. Did I say breakout rooms? Yes. Okay. We'll just do 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
2-minute breakout rooms. Very quick.
Right? Yeah. Some people do.
Or like this one, focuses on skip count. That's so fine. Oh, this one.
And then, so they're just saying, musical, yeah, program singing. You are actually listening to it.
Am I?
It's not. Yeah. So we could just stop open. Because there's this part of two entity and basically chat on this purchase was what was yours.
The board is the entity, not a computer.
Yeah, the board.
That's super weird. Right?
Yeah. And then
Because my computer is not listed.
the board is the Morgan Hill room.
Oh, yeah. That can be the weird.
Go back and see what
Yeah. So apologies, people in the room. We recognize that this is like longer waits than normal. Yeah.
Tell me when I
All right. So, what do we think? How does this lesson align with the expectations of the standard? Yeah, in the chat, any responses from the breakout rooms or in our room? Yes, Stacy. Right, kind of aligns with having the 4 groups of 2, so you see the multiplication there, but they're focusing on skip counting, and they're always talking about the skip counting, so it's not really connecting that
Yes.
multiplication. Yeah, and we had the same exact conversation with a group of teacher, and they really wanted to say it exemplified the standard. They really wanted to. Okay, so there's that push, that drive to teachers like, yeah, that is. But we had to pull them back and say, okay, is this really the standard, or is this a foundational skill for the standard? And we finally came to that realization that, yeah, no, it's a foundational skill for the standard. This is not the actual standard. This is not grade level content. So in reality, we need to be thinking about, are we going to be using this lesson or not?
And the mind shift for them was, but it's so like our students need to do this. They're not coming to us with these skills, so this lesson is important. So we did recognize that and say yes, that it is an important skill for them to have. Does it have to be a complete lesson? And is it something that they're going to get in one lesson? Is it something that can fit somewhere else? And that's where the design considerations come into play. Can it be something, and maybe even more effective, if you did these skills in a daily warm-up for leading up to that lesson, so that they're getting what they need more consistently over time in smaller doses to build that skill to lead up to when that lesson is happening. And that was a big aha for them. That was like, yes, we can do that. And so that was the big aha and mind shift, was like, it doesn't have to be a singular lesson. It can be something that you're incorporating in small chunks, and quite possibly they'd be even more prepared for that lesson in their current grade level versus if it was just one lesson before. And we're making those design tweaks based off of the data, right? So we're not just deciding, oh, it's a foundational thing to this standard, we have to do it. No, do our kiddos actually need it, or do they already know it? Let's figure that out first and foremost, right?
In the chat, Debbie mentioned that context that the context was given to the students in the textbook lesson. There was just a context, and Juliet is mentioning that if students are ready, a teacher can teach beyond the standard, but they should not be assessing students beyond that standard.
Awesome, thank you so much. Okay, so We asked ourselves the question, is it grade level content? We said, nope, it's not, but it could be possibly a prerequisite to the following lesson. So that's where we're thinking about where are we putting it in.
So kind of piggybacking on the conversation we just had is we had a conversation about dipping into this idea of critical understandings. So that's the second part of the process. What content, knowledge, skills, academic vocabulary, and background knowledge do students need to access this lesson? In other words, what do students need to know, do, and understand to be successful with that content? And so this is where this other great handy dandy tool comes into play, because you have a resource where they've already considered what those are and put it into this wonderful coherence map that Heidi's going to talk a little more.
So this coherence map, great tool. I think we're putting the link in the chat now. And I think it's linked on the slide too. But if not, you can always just Google Achieve the Core Coherence Map and it'll come right up. So it is looking at every single standard and identifying what are the prerequisite standards and what follows that standard. What is it leading into? So we had our teachers go into the coherence map and click on their grade level, 3rd grade, and then go into OA1. And when we did that, this popped up for us. And so if you're online playing around with it, that you should see this screen when you click map the standard for 3rd grade OA1. And
can you repeat where it's found?
Yes.
There's no link.
Oh, there's no link. I apologize. Google Achieve the Core Coherence Map. And it should be the first thing that pops up. And now when I even start typing Achieve the Core in my search bar, it's like literally the first thing that comes up because I go to it so often. You'll have to click Get Started like twice, which is really annoying, but and then, you'll get this picture and it has all these lines everywhere. And it might remind you of, like A Beautiful Mind when at the ending, one of those ending scenes when you go into his back shed or whatever, and he has strings all over with paper all over, and you're like, oh my God. I love it. I love this map, but it is a little much for some people. But if you slow down and you take a minute, it'll be good. It'll be good. You'll understand it. So if we go towards the left-hand side where I have these things circled in purple, you'll notice that 2 of them have lines coming out from them and they have arrows into this standard. And those are the 2 that are prerequisite for this standard. And then you'll notice that you have this one in the center and this dotted line between it and the top one. And that means these are being developed simultaneously. So I'm actually going to be considering all 3 as prerequisites for these. And then if you look up at the top, you'll have another dotted line going up, and that's a prerequisite for the standard as well. So I'm developing these simultaneously. These lines over here, do they make you crazy? Yes, they do. You can follow them sometimes not as well. The purpose is, what is this going to then support? What future learnings are we going to? So there's a 3rd grade one, there's a 4th grade one, 5th grade, we can have more here, depending on what the standard is. So this is really helpful in those vertical articulation meetings, talking about, okay, what do I really need for you to teach at that lower grade level so that I can I can have a solid foundation for my grade level, and vice versa. So we're recognizing that we have 3 standards. And I think did we drop in the chat the 3rd grade? Okay, perfect. So we put it on a handout too, just so for ease of use. You could go to the coherence map and map it, or you could have the Google Doc. But we're looking at determining whether groups or objects has odd or even number of numbers by pairing objects and counting them by 2s. Use the addition to find total number of objects arranged in a rectangular way with up to 5 rows and 5 columns, and count within 1,000. Skip count by 5s, 10s, and 100s. Okay, so we're looking at all of these standards as being the prerequisite pieces. So that's great. That's giving us some specific content, some specific skills that we need people, our students rather, to have going into this second lesson. Because now we're thinking forward. We're okay. We're not going to do lesson 1 unless necessary. So let's look at lesson 2. That's still the standard. So we have the content skills, but what vocabulary and background knowledge are they going to need going in this? And then we had the teachers really look at that lesson. So some of this is really lesson dependent, curriculum dependent. The curriculum is going to emphasize specific vocabulary and it's going to differ from curriculum to curriculum, same for background knowledge. So we were looking at, okay, so we got the content knowledge and skills.
Are we going to give them time to talk about it?
Were we?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm bad. Okay, we're going to give you time to talk about it. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah.
Okay, are we doing breakout rooms?
Yeah, we did have them so they can talk, so they can come up with what they think the content, knowledge, skills.
All right, ignore me. Don't look at that slide. You didn't see that slide. No, no one saw that. Okay, breakout rooms. Think about these 4 areas.
Let's do 4 minutes, like roughly,
4 minutes?
so they can look at each of the prerequisites and come up with their own list.
Yes.
So that
Come,
would be next.
come up with your own list for each of these 4 areas, looking at lesson 2, 3.2.
Yes. It works. I'm not going to see this really. Right. She's like, right. Interesting. Otherwise, so just in case. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. That's right, before you go to the website, yeah.
Awesome. All right. Let's hear, before we go to the slide that you didn't see, you didn't see it, Smash. Let's just go, do we want to do each one, Kim? All right, content knowledge. What content knowledge? 3.2. Either type in the chat or folks in the room can volunteer to talk. Yeah, Joseph?
They need to know repeated addition.
Repeated addition. Anything else? Okay, all right. Skills.
It says, to us, it looks like this lesson is still addressing second grade content.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I like it. Okay. Debbie, can you say more in the chat or unmute? Can they unmute?
No.
I don't know either.
They can't.
They could.
Only if she wants to. No pressure. If you want to type in the chat, all good. All good.
While she's doing that, we can, anyone else?
Anyone else in terms of content knowledge?
Skip counting goes with that too. Yeah.
Skip counting.
I agree with Debbie. As a former second grade teacher, we did a lot that part leading into multiplication. The part leading into multiplication, we spent a lot of time on the repeated addition and then understanding the groups of and how many are in a group. But that's definitely, I would also consider second grade.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That skill.
Yes. That means that is repeated addition, multiplication, second.
Yes. Okay. So I think we could have more conversation about that for 3.2, thinking about whether it is truly grade level. We do have the examples in here of they're equating the repeated addition now with the multiplication. So depending on where we land with a teacher group, whether or not they think that is good enough to be grade level content, we would move forward. But this is always a conversation, and this is about the teacher's understanding of their interpretation of the curriculum with some outside content knowledge, content expertise coming in, being provided. But it's always a negotiation with our teachers because they are the ones who are going to have to move this forward, and they're going to have to make those decisions day by day. This is just one instance of us collaborating with them. So we need to empower them to be able to do that on their own. Okay, skills. Or vocabulary or background knowledge to move things along so we're not bored out of our minds. Just, trying. Anything we're finding?
Vocabulary, they have to know. Sorry, but vocabulary, they need to know the factors and the product because they're pointing that out here. And so those can trip up the kids a lot of times because you're using these words that they're like, I don't know what that means.
Totally. Absolutely. Any other?
And how important that is for like our multilingual learners, right? These conversations and really thinking about these design factors.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So here's what I came up with. But this is not an expert opinion. This is just what I came up with one evening. Okay. So we have groups of, model, represent, equal groups, addition, or number sentences. I was going to say those factors, and then I actually wrote that on those lists, and I was like, wait a second. Is it a critical understanding or current new knowledge? And I was like, oh, it's new knowledge. Okay. So then I took it off my list. but I totally went there with you because I was just trying to figure out, okay, what do they have to have going into the lesson? And so then we can create that list, including those things, but then we can disaggregate it between the new learning versus what they need coming in. Love that. Okay, and then the background background knowledge. I saw the word apple and said the word apple, yay. Background apple. I don't know what a background apple is. Anyways, they need to know some stuff about what apple bread is. They need to know some stuff about recipes, about the counters, because they talked about counters. Hopefully they've been using counters. This is the 3rd unit. And then weight of common fruits. So they have, maybe we need to bring in some apple bread, or maybe we've done stuff with recipes in the past, but just knowing our specific groups of students, knowing that those contexts were in these problems, I would want to make sure, like, just brief thought, do they understand this, or is this all completely out of left field for my students? Brief thought, right? And then seeing what I can do. Okay. So we're going to try that one more time. Is that all right with you? I'm going to try it one more time. Okay. So we're going to remember that we're looking for critical understandings. What do they need going into 3.3 now? So let's skip over to the next lesson, 3.3. What do they need in terms of content knowledge, skills, vocabulary, and background knowledge? Minutes.
Yeah, let's do another 5 minutes.
Another 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
All right.
Right.
Okay, I like that. Are they back from the breakout? Okay.
Yeah, I could zoom in. I can just put some. Yeah, if you wanted to join the Zoom for later.
I could just present virtually.
Yeah. That's a good idea. I'll just mine. I'll just pick up. That works. Yeah, it's hybrid, but one presenter in the room, one presenter. That works. Yeah, she's texting. Sorry. Other issue came up about later on in the day. Strategist.
Okay. Closing in 30 seconds. 10 seconds.
Sorry. Yeah, 10 seconds is so much.
All right, friends. That might have been too quick because I don't know if you noticed, and I didn't say it, so apologies. But the third lesson, oh yeah, I did. It's on the slide. Yay for me. The third lesson was on a different standard. Okay, so that different standard, whoops, that was me. So yes, my boss's fault. So we had to go back and look at the coherence map again for this guy because it's on the next standard, right? So when we did that, we looked and said, oh, look. Awesome. Thank you, Arian. Okay, so when we looked at this, OA3, we said, oh, well, OA1 is a prerequisite as well as OA2. Okay, so those things we're going to need to make sure that they're solid before we go on to this lesson. And then we're not going to go into it more than that because we're going to stay right there. But hopefully you were able to look through and come up with some skills or vocabulary, or was it a little bit, were we able to distinguish now vocabulary and some background? Yeah. Anything that came up of notice in terms of looking at this lesson before we go on?
You mentioned that the standard is products within 100, but lesson 3 and 4 have products in it.
Oh, I love it. Debbie, you are on it, girl.
I know.
Love it. Okay, so products under 100, but this is under 30. Yes, great noticing. Anything else? Okay, all right.
All right.
So as we're going through our process, we are now at that point for diagnose and design in our process. The third part of our 4-part process is diagnose, which is to really plan your approach to diagnosing students' unfinished learning in response to the critical understanding. So really thinking, how can we use our assessments and our assessment data to bridge the learning most effectively? And so this is where we're moving into next. Some considerations we want to keep in mind is, what do we know about students' current competencies? How might we diagnose students' unfinished learning of critical understandings? And how might we use that information to understand best how we might support our learners moving forward? Okay.
And this really becomes, these are a conversation with teachers, because we have to do some negotiation typically at this point, because they're like, oh, well, I know that they don't know this. And I'm like, well, how do you know that? Like, what is there anything we can look at together to take a look and see? Maybe there's a little bit that they know and don't. And so we have to have a conversation with our teachers about this to really drill down. And sometimes we think we know something, and then it turns out that's just anecdotal, but it's based off of maybe experiences where they weren't successful for others. So maybe they actually know. Just being able to see. Okay, we're good. Hear, not see. Good for me. All right. So when we're doing that, we're looking at the previous grade level stuff, right? And we are identifying from second grade all of those pieces. So we've kind of broken up some of the standards. Let's be very explicit about what we want to find out and how, and thinking about then that'll help us figure out how we're going to diagnose that. And that comes into our instructional sequence here, where we're looking at those critical understandings and then diagnosing them. So perhaps we've gone through, and yay for us, we've looked at all the critical understandings, and we've identified all these things for going into these lessons. And then I don't know what that animation was for. Good for me. But then we're going to be thinking about the actual design based off of whatever it is that we got for our assessment data. And we've just passed out, and I think is in the chat, like an example of a spreadsheet where they could be doing kind of like a running record. So that's one thing we're advocating more and more, is that how can we not just have event-based grading, a quiz, but how can we have a running record of student skills? Something that where we could also take in multiple measures. So maybe it is partially an exit ticket or what, but maybe it's like during game time, what are we seeing them do in their stations where they're doing various games? Being able to get multiple measures, what current proficiencies are. But then once we do that, maybe we'll identify students A, B, H, M, and Y. We need some review maybe on arrays and what that is. And so then we're going to go from there, figuring once we do that. So this is the point in time where we talk about with teachers, okay, what is the actual data that you're using? Okay, because we want to make sure that we're not misunderstanding their knowledge, that they do have adequate opportunities to show what they know, and we're leaning off actual data. So what data do you currently use to identify where opportunities to bridge critical understandings might exist, and when and how might you design for opportunity to bridge? So that's our reflection right now for diagnose and design.
Why don't we just stay in, no breakout?
No breakout.
Just wanted to no breakout. And then to have a conversation together.
So I'm going to repeat what Kim just said because she said it beautifully. We're going to stay together and we're going to have a conversation, and then we'll in the chat and as well as in the group, and then we'll come together. So a few minutes just all together, and then we'll discuss. Anything in the chat? So we move forward. All right, friends.
Okay, so in the chat, Debbie said, I work with secondary teachers, so time is a huge barrier. We use math talk launch routines to surface understandings of prerequisite skills or concepts and co-create a foundation to build on for the next lesson. And then Raquel mentioned that they use a number sense screener.
Oh, awesome. Okay. I wonder if that number sense screener is district or teacher created, or if it's one that's accessible to others. I know Tulare, I believe, created some number sense screeners. Yes. This afternoon at 1:15, Tulare will be sharing those number sense screeners. Plug. You're welcome. You're welcome, Joseph. Yeah, I'm presenting also with Arian at 1:15. Ah,
We said prerequisites, screener reports from iReady.
iReady. Yes, that's one thing that came up definitely within ours.
Unit pre-assessments, it take up a whole day.
Unit pre-assessments. Yep.
Small group instruction and exit tickets and our teacher observations.
Small group instruction, exit tickets, and teacher observations. I will say we had some conversation with our teacher groups about iReady and whether or not that was accurate data. We also were looking at curriculum pre-assessments. And we had some issues with the curriculum pre-assessments because it was not assessing what we thought the prerequisites were. Some problems were, but other problems weren't. So we recognized that we would need to remake those curriculum pre-assessments. More teacher time, unfortunately. But
We'll get it right.
maybe they'll get it right in the next one. Yeah. I don't think so, but good. Happy thoughts.
Negative thoughts, positive mouth. They will. They're going to really take all this in and learn from.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So they're going to change all the curriculum.
Yes.
Because California redid their frameworks. All right. So thinking about what we could do moving forward with this, we might need to do a whole class instruction lesson, a mini lesson, or maybe we're like, oh gosh, there's a few things that maybe we need to do more. But it's really dependent, right? For this group, if we only have these students, maybe we're going to do a small group pull out during some independent work time. At another time, maybe it's one student and we need to go over and sit with them during that lesson. Depending on what it is, that's what we're gonna design the treatment based off of the actual problem that we have data on. All right.
So the final piece we wanted to go through was just this idea of leading learning acceleration. And so what we did, not only were we working with sites, but we were also working with leadership teams because, and I think that's really what has made the work even, more successful as far as implementation is the leaders came to a session before we actually started working with the sites. And we went through this process with them. And then they also joined in on our initial sessions, most sessions with the grade level, in hopes that it's kind of like a TOT, that if this grade level is the early adopters, then the principal and the site team will learn this process and then they'll be able to spread that throughout their site. So the idea was really diving into acceleration. What we talked with you about acceleration versus remediation, we went a little bit deeper than we did today. The 5 components of learning acceleration. Again, we went a little deeper with them. And then thinking about learning acceleration through a practice profile, which the leaders really like. It's kind of like examples of like what should it look like and where might I be in that on that path towards what it should look like. And then a walkthrough tool, because many times leaders will ask, well, is there any kind of a tool that I can use to observe classrooms and get a gauge of where we are in our current standing? And then we took them through this idea of a vision for the future because we wanted to backwards plan with them. What is your end game goal? Like, what is your vision and how can you best articulate that to your staff and and create collective buy-in and leadership? So we asked them some questions about what do they envision learning acceleration will look like at every level, so that they can see where they are and where they want to go. And then part of that was this idea of getting them ready. So looking at their data and making their decisions on where they wanted to start. Every site district has a different on-ramp into this work. So we took the FIA and looked at the components of the FIA. Heidi and another one of our team members, Jake Richard, created a modified FIA based off of the components of learning acceleration that they could then score and rank themselves and come up with, all right, this is where we are. What is the most pressing or most bang for our buck as far as where we might want to start the work? They also took an initiative inventory because we know how difficult it could be to think, oh no, one more initiative. So what are you currently doing? Like in one district, they're really working on PLCs. And so we're doing some work with them with a heavy focus on UDL, but they're starting to see the overlap. But this isn't something new. This is to enhance the work your district's already doing in the implementation of PLCs. And so it doesn't seem like yet one more thing, but oh, this is just a deeper dive into what we're already doing. It's the same idea with this process. So, we're showing them this process. We're like, this isn't one more thing. It's just another way to approach and really dig your heels into the work of PLCs. And then they came up with, after they looked at the initiative alignment, thinking about what could our possible problem of practice be, or thinking about what might be our goal. And they did some goal setting work. And then finally, we talked about the year-long plan or multi-year plan of what might that look like with our support for your professional development, for your systems. How do you want to roll it out? How can we support that? And then helping them to think about how might you implement some PDSA cycles in your work. So we wanted to give you this just so that, this is one sliver of that work, but we wanted to kind of pull back the lens so you can see how does this fit within the bigger system and context. So we do have some tools and resources, again, that we created. So you'll see in one side there is that modified FIA that's all digitized. And if you'd like, we would be happy to share that with you. You can email either myself or Heidi for that. And then again, some of the other reflection tools that we mentioned in that process are available.
All right. So we're going to come to a close. We only have, we're on time. It's scary. Lately, we've been on time on all of our PEs. It's like, oh my goodness. Right, sorry. Internal monologue. All right, so we are going to think about something I learned that squares with my thinking. We're doing geometric forms, geometry, okay? Math session, geometry. Something that I learned that squares with my thinking. A question that is still circling in my mind. 3 important points I want to remember because it's a triangle. Sorry. And then one direction I will take or action I will take, and it's an arrow, which isn't a regular shape, but we're going to go with it.
And because of the time, let's just do a quick 2-minute. Actually, do we not want to go out to break?
Let's not go out to break. Let's just keep it
In the chat. Is that okay?
Let's go and let's have our online folks please put something in the chat. You can answer one of these. You could answer all of these. Your choice. It is up to you. For those in our room, if you wanted to talk to a partner.
Yeah. Probably that. Is there anything in the top?
Debbie asked a question. She said how to implement this process with high schools I'm working with. And then Sunny shared a square. Learning acceleration is something that meets the needs of each and every student. And Lori said, identify and focus on critical understanding. Ask yourself, what do my students already know? Yeah, and that goes with the asset space.
Asset space, I love it.
3 dimensions.
And your question about high school, I'm wondering if that question is coming from the fact that there isn't a major work of the grade outlined for high school. There is within the coherence map, the high school standards are outlined there, though. They didn't for a while, but now there are the high school standards outlined in the coherence map as well. So I would actually be using that.
And before we end, we have 3 minutes, Heidi. Sorry. I wanted to go to the next slide. That's the feedback. So sorry. Grant work.
Sorry. With grant work comes surveys.
So you'll see their session name is Unlocking Learning Acceleration Focus on Mathematics. If you wouldn't mind, and even online, taking a few moments, Erin's going to drop in the link for you to provide some feedback. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending in person and online, and for participating and being a trooper with all of our breakout sessions, breakout rooms, and things like that. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.